Every day in the USA, people find themselves in court.
DNA District Court for County Washington, State Michigan, session. All those having the court draw near, the Honorable Judge Simpson preside.
You may be seated. We do this first. Court does call the case of the people versus Delmore Brown.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. Ashley Lonnie of the people.
Good afternoon, Assistant Public Defender Lauren Kearney on behalf of Mr. Brown.
And we probably should get the waiver out of the way.
Yes, Your Honor. The people would waive any conflict between this honorable court and the Office of the Public Defender. The people do not believe any conflict exists. Make waiver for the avoidance of consent.
Public Defender's Office likewise does not believe this conflict is there.
Thank you. And the court, for its part, also does not believe this conflict either under the Michigan court rules or the cases decided they were under. To the extent a conflict does exist, given the waivers, the court will consent to hear the matter. Are the people in defense ready for trial?
Yes, Your Honor. May we approach on an unrelated issue, Ms. Kearney and I?
Why unrelated? Sure, come on.
There you go.
Okay, record should reflect we had a brief bench conference. And are there any other preliminary matters?
Your Honor, I have my officer in charge, Officer Megan Lave, the Simpson Township Police Department, sitting with me. Any other potential witnesses are sequestered.
All right.
Nothing for me, Your Honor.
All right, very good. Bring the jury.
The jury. May be seated. Your Honor, the jury is present.
Thank you. Court does call the case of the people of the state of Michigan versus Delmore Brown. Counsel, please state your appearance.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. Ashley Lonnie of the people.
Good afternoon, Assistant Public Defender Lauren Kearney on behalf of Mr. Brown, who is present.
All right, very good. Thank you. And we are ready for jury trial. Lundy, opening statement.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon. Today, I intend to introduce evidence to show that on or about December the 9th of 2023, the defendant and the victim, Michelle Brown, were in Pittsfield Township, right here, we are now, at a location where they had a business together. I intend to introduce evidence to show that at that time, they were still legally married, but they had been separated. I intend to introduce evidence to show that on that date and at the business, the defendant put his hands on Michelle Brown. And I intend to introduce evidence to show she was battered by him. At the end of the trial, I will get back up here and I will ask you to return a verdict of guilty and to hold the defendant accountable for his actions on that day. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Perrine, would you like to give an opening statement now? Reserve?
Now, please.
Now, you may proceed.
Good afternoon. You'll hear testimony today that Michelle and Delmore met in Jamaica in 2008, where my client is originally from. Delmore grew up in a farm in Jamaica, but at that time he was working at a resort. Michelle was there on vacation. They moved back to the States and they built a life together here. They had a business, a home, children. You'll hear testimony today that their relationship broke down when Michelle started a relationship with another man. We're not here to litigate their relationship or their divorce or anything like that. But what is our business is the boyfriend's involvement in this case. You will hear testimony say that Michelle did not call the police, her boyfriend did. And we're here today because of that phone call. You will hear evidence today that Delmore and Michelle were working together at their warehouse. Michelle dropped off the kids. They were hungry, so my client went out to get them sandwiches. When he came back, he and Michelle got in a verbal argument. He's going to tell you that after that argument, he left the room. He's going to tell you that Michelle followed him. He's going to tell you that Michelle headbutted him. And he's going to tell you that he pushed her away from him. That's the crux of this case. You will hear from him today. You will hear that he didn't hit Michelle. He didn't choke Michelle. He didn't threaten Michelle. The instructions the judge is going to give you say that the prosecutor has to prove every element of the crime beyond a reasonable doubt, the highest standard in the legal system. The evidence will show that the state cannot prove their case. Those instructions will also show that if a person acts in self-defense, their behavior is legally justified. The evidence will show that my client, Delmore's actions were justified on that day. In this legal system, it's not the defense's job to prove anything. I could sit there, kick up my feet, and hang out for the rest of the day. Again, Mr. Brown can only be found guilty if you, the jurors, believe he is guilty beyond any reasonable doubt. At the conclusion of this trial, I will ask you to return a verdict of not guilty. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I review first?
You may. And please come forward and be sworn.
Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear and affirm the testimony you're about to give you the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thanks. Go ahead. First and last name for the record.
Michelle Brown, Brown.
You may inquire.
Good afternoon, Ms. Brown. How do you know the defendant?
He's my husband.
There's some tissues right there for you. Are you still legally married?
Yes,
What's his name?
Delmore Camille Brown.
Do you see the person you know to be Delmore Camille Brown in the courtroom? Can you tell me where he's sitting and what he's wearing, please?
Sitting right there. Burgundy suit.
Your Honor, may the record reflect and must identify the defendant.
That objection record shows so.
Said you're still married?
Yeah,
How long have you been married?
it's 12 years in June.
Well, 12 years in June of 2024.
Yes.
So you got married in June of 2012? When did you meet?
We met in 2007 in January.
Do you have any children?
We have two,
How old are they?
almost 8 and 10. Well, 7 and 9.
Are you currently living with the defendant? When did your relationship start to break down?
This around the summer of 2021.
And what happened after December of 2021?
I had a doctor.
Did you decide, well, what did you decide about your relationship after December of 2021?
I decided it was no longer working for me. We weren't getting along. We had like a few weeks of peace. It was all.
What did you decide about your living arrangements? Were you living together in December of 2021?
Yes.
And how about after that?
Yes. We lived, I lived there until June of 2020.
When you, in June of 2023, where did you go?
I moved in with my friend.
And when did you start dating your current boyfriend?
It was early, in 2022.
Was that someone you knew before you started dating him? Had you had a friendship with him before?
Yes.
Talk about the December 9th, 2023. Do you remember that date? Were you at 3279 Trade Center in Pittsfield Township on that date?
I was.
Who was there with you?
Delmore and my 2 children.
Does Delmore have a nickname that you usually refer to him by?
Del.
And you, Del, and the children were all at that location?
Yes.
What is that location?
It was a business that we were operating.
What kind of business?
It was a medical.
All right. And on that date, what were you doing at the business with Del?
I was in the front trimming the product and he was in the back watering.
Objection to speculation.
Objection, I'll allow the answer. Go ahead.
What were you were in the front trimming, he was,
Yeah, we had our own jobs and I was trimming and he was tending to the plants in the back.
did something happen that day between the two of you? Any physical contact?
Yes.
What happened?
Do you want the whole, like, starting from what we were like bickering about or?
You were bickering? What were you bickering about?
Well, it started out, we were talking about how I wanted to bring my boyfriend back into the business to work for us, because he had worked for us before. And then Delmore was getting upset, so we started talking about things. And then we were talking about his friend's dog. And, he's babysitting for him because he had COVID.
So let's pause there. So we used a pronoun of his dog. Whose friend's dog?
I apologize. Delmore's friend's dog.
He was watching a dog for a friend
Yes.
because the friend had COVID.
Friend had COVID.
And then what?
And I said, do you still have the dog? And he said, no, we dropped it off. And I said, did you just call Blue and it? The dog's name is Blue. Did you just call Blue and it? And he's like, yeah, it's an it, it's a dog. Like, yeah. He's like, family, you prefer to test by their names.
What happened after that?
It escalated. I did a Google search of something that I wanted him to read, and he walked in the back, and I followed him to show him the phone. And as soon as I held the phone up, he had a pair of trimmers in his hand, and he said, if you weren't the mother of my children, I would stab you in the throat.
What happened next?
And I said, just look at the phone, and he kind of went, I don't remember exactly what was said, but it was something like, fuck out of my face,
Get the fuck out of my face.
fuck out of my face. And then I kind of went back in and was like, fuck off. And then as soon as I did that, he grabbed me by the throat and kind of pushed me back. He didn't have it for very long, but he grabbed me and pushed me back.
So I see you making a motion with your hand that I want to document for the record because we're just making an audio recording. It looked to me like you took your right hand and put it palm side against your throat.
Yes.
And your fingers were like just underneath your jaw. Did you consent to him touching you that way? How did it make you feel?
I was shocked because he never done anything like that before. I was a little scared. Right then I said, I can't believe you did that. And so I went into the car and I texted my boyfriend. He said, yeah.
Objection here, side.
Sustained.
What happened after you texted your boyfriend about what happened?
He said,
Without telling me what he said, without telling me what your boyfriend said, what did you do?
I started to clean up and pack my things and get ready to leave. I didn't leave right away because we had one of our other employees come in and I still had a business to run, so I had to deal with that.
How were you feeling after that happened?
Shaken up.
You mentioned that you felt a little bit scared. Did you feel afraid afterward too?
Temporarily, yeah. But I was gonna be anyway, so like.
Did you become aware at some point that the police were coming? Or had been called?
No.
When did you find out the police had been called?
It's came in the back and said, there's 5 people outside our uniforms.
The kids came in the back. Can you describe a little bit how this is set up? We don't know what it looks like, so.
Okay, so
Yeah.
you walk in, there's a lobby area, and there's tables where we sit and use and the kids usually stay there and they play on their video games. And then when we walk through like a little like hallway area, and then in the back is where the warehouse is, where the rooms are.
Is there an ability to get outside from the back as well as the front?
Yes,
When the police arrived, did you speak to them?
I did.
Now, going back to the touching, you said that he grabbed your throat, did you say, and pushed you back?
Yes.
You speak to him again after this happened?
Yes.
What happened when you spoke to him again?
I just explained that I was just surprised and that, I recall his mother saying, "Don't ever put your hands on a woman." What would you say? Your mother knew what happened. And as we were trying to like have this conversation, that's when the kids came back.
Did he say anything to you about the incident and the assault?
He did. He said that he tried to say that I headbutted him first.
How tall are you, Michelle?
I am like,
How tall is Dell?
maybe.
Taller than you? Did you headbutt him?
No, I did not.
Why didn't you call the police?
Because I didn't want the cops to come to a rural facility.
Have you since filed for a divorce?
Yes.
May I have a moment, Your Honor?
Okay.
Michelle, that location, that trade center, what county is that in?
Washington
Do you know what state?
State.
Yeah, I know it's a silly question, but it's one of those questions I have to ask. Now, at the time that this happened, you were still married,
Yes.
still are married,
Still are.
and you do have children together.
Yes.
You were not household members at that time. You lived in a different home.
I did.
I'll pass the witness, Your Honor.
Cross-examination.
Morning, Ms. Brown. When the officers first arrived, you were surprised. You weren't expecting them. As you testified, you did not call the police, and it was Timothy that called.
Yes.
And he wasn't there that day, was he?
He was not.
And at the time, you and Delmore were still married.
Yes.
You were working together, obviously.
Yes.
You co-owned this business together. You had children together, so you co-parented. You saw each other frequently.
Yes.
And right now, you're going through the divorce.
Yes.
And you filed for divorce
I did.
in January.
Yes.
So right after the new year
Yes.
and after December 9th.
Yes.
And you agree with me, divorces are difficult. You have to verbally state your answer.
I didn't hear what you said.
You would agree that divorces are difficult,
Yes.
emotionally difficult. There's messy,
Yes.
there's lots of disagreements. And as you testified previously, you had all these things together. You had a business together, children, a house. I want to turn to December 9th. and ask a little bit more, a few more questions. So you went to drop off your children that day to the warehouse?
And I dropped them off.
You went there to drop the children off?
No, I was working that day.
Okay. And Delmore was already there working.
I believe, I'm not sure who arrived first.
And it's your testimony that you got into this verbal argument
Yes,
about Blue.
yes,
He walked away back into that back portion of the warehouse,
yes,
and you followed him.
yes,
And it's your testimony, he said, "Get the fuck out of my face."
yes.
And you didn't get out of his face.
Not right away, no.
You were still standing
I'm
there,
still standing.
and that conversation continued. You didn't have any injuries on the 9th?
No,
You didn't seek medical attention?
no,
And on that day, you spoke with the officers
I did,
and you made a statement.
yes,
And the officer was taking notes of your statement,
yes,
and you told them everything
I did.
because it's important to be truthful. It's important to be complete. Verbal,
Yes.
yeah. When we're dealing with, I know it's a little clunky, when we're dealing with sensitive matters such as this.
Her name first, I'll get to the water. She's just got that story.
Yes. Go ahead, counsel.
You okay to proceed? Okay. And while you were making that statement, you told the officer that you told them everything.
I did.
And you said that you did, right, as is your testimony today. And they asked you if Delmore threatened you with weapons,
Yes,
and you told them at that time, no.
right,
But then the officer called you back,
yes,
and that is when you told
yes,
them
I remember saying, yes,
that he did that he did threaten you with the scissors.
yes.
May I have a moment, Your Honor?
You may. Any redirect?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
You may step down. Thank you, ma'am.
This witness be excused?
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
This witness is excused. We call your next witness.
Your Honor, people rest.
Okay, could you take the jury, please?
All rise for the jury.
Excellent.
Are there going to be any you may be seated. Are there going to be any witnesses for the defense?
Your Honor, can we have 5 minutes?
You. I'll give you 15.
I'll take it.
All right, all right. Why don't you, so court is standing in recess. Thank you.
Teenage District Court for County of Washington, State of Michigan is now back in session. The Honorable Jason.
You may be seated. Court recalls the case of the People versus Delmore Brown.
Ashley Lonnie.
Good afternoon, Assistant Attorney General there, and I have Mr. Brown with me.
All right. And I had a recess, and are there going to be witnesses for the defense?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Is the defendant going to testify?
Yes,
All right. Mr. Moore? You understand that you have an absolute and constitutional right to remain silent, not testify in this case. All right. You understand that it is your decision if you decide to testify. All right. It's to be made in consultation with your counsel, but the decision is yours. You understand that? And is it your decision that you wish to testify in this matter? All right. Very good. Thank you. You may have a seat. Let's bring them down. What, you stood up before time? Or what?
I
Oh,
didn't know-
never mind. I'm not gonna call you. I just,
Good for your exercise.
yeah, I see.
May be seated. Yeah, jury is present.
Thank you. Court recalls case of People versus Delmore Brown.
People. This is a public pleasure alarm hearing on behalf of Mr. Brown who is present.
All right. And the people have arrested defense.
The defense calls Delmore Brown.
All right, very good. Sir, please come forward to be sworn.
Please raise your right hand. You solemnly swear to affirm the testimony about to give you the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. State still your first name. Delmore Brown.
All right,
Spell it, please.
thank you. You may inquire.
Good afternoon, Mr. Brown. If you don't understand a question or can't hear me, please ask me to repeat, okay? How do you know Michelle Brown? Where did you meet? How did you meet?
I was working at the resort and she was there.
Did you stay in Jamaica after you met?
She stayed with me for 6 months after.
Did you return to the United States together?
I don't know, she came back and I came out.
And when was this?
I moved here in September 2008.
And when did you get married?
We got married in June of 2001.
Do you have any children? How old are your children?
Daughter was 7, son was 9.
Is your marriage still together? Were you separated at the time of this offense? Was it your choice to be separated? What led to this separation? Did you file for divorce? And you shared a business together?
Yes.
When did you open your business?
Not quite sure of the date, but we're just going back. Got tasty.
So early 2020. What was the business called?
We didn't establish a name for it yet. We just in the process, we were just in the process of filing with the state for the names and all the licenses.
What happened to the business? Is it still? And I want to turn your attention to December 9th. Where were you that day?
I was at
That is the warehouse for your business. What were you doing there?
I was checking out the maps, making sure that the food was reservoir was filled and everything was running accordingly.
Were your children there with you?
No, not at the time.
Did Michelle come to that warehouse?
She showed up.
What happened after she showed up?
She brought the kids in. I asked them if they ate. They said no, they haven't.
Objection, hearsay.
I went and got my.
Hold on. I'll allow it. I understand it may be hearsay. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor.
I went and got my food.
What happened next?
I gave them their food. Michelle asked me.
Objection, hearsay.
Respond.
I'll re-ask the question.
All right, very good.
After the children, you gave the children their sandwiches. What happened?
Me and Michelle got into a bickering about our dog. My friend, my brother dog.
What happened after this argument?
I told her that if she knew so much about pronouns and nouns, she should become a scholar. I walked away from her and went to the other side of the restaurant warehouse.
And can you describe the warehouse a little bit for us?
So the warehouse, the front is like an office setup. And the back is where all the activity takes place. That's where the warehouse is.
Okay. And you said you testified you walked away. Where did you walk to?
I went to the back where there's two separate doors.
What happened next?
While I was back there, I grabbed one of the trimmers and I was heading towards another room. And behind me, I heard Michelle screaming at me, saying I should read this. And I said, just leave me alone. I don't want to do this with you. I went towards the room and she followed me. Said, Michelle, get out of my face.
Okay, I'm gonna stop you there. You testified you grabbed clippers. What do you do with those clippers? Okay. What happened after she followed you back?
I was standing between the door to pull the door up because I wanted to shut the door so she would leave me alone. I said, Michelle, I don't want to argue with you about this. Just leave me alone. It's an it. And then she stepped forward towards me, and her forehead and her hair smelled me in my nose. And I said, I grabbed my nose. And I said, I don't want to do this with you. And I put my hand on her chest, put my hand on her back, pushed her out, and pulled the door open, shut.
And you kind of made a hand movement, so I'm going to describe it. So you put your hand towards your forehead.
No, her forehead slapped me in my nose. My hand I put on her chest, and my other hand I put on her back, slide her out from between the doors so I could shut it. Because if I shut the door, I'd hit her with it. And if I pushed her, then she would fall over. So I just wanted her out of my space so I could shut the door and go back to work.
And you testified you wanted her out of your space. Why did you want her out of your space?
She was bickering with me, trying to argue with me about the dog and it and he and all that stuff. I didn't want to deal with it.
After her head made contact with your head, how did you feel?
It was just, I feel like it was escalating. And I didn't want it to escalate any further. I just wanted it to go. And I wanted to finish my work so I could take my kids home.
After you locked the door, what happened next?
I sat there for about 2 to 3 minutes. And then I went back and checked on the kids, asked them if they were finished. And I asked them where their mom was, and they said she's in the bathroom. And I went back to finish working. I said, I'll come back and get you in a few.
What happened after that?
She came back around there, and she was talking to me about what happened.
Objection, Your Honor. I'm sorry. I'll withdraw.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
She, we were having a discussion about the incident that happened, and how stupid it was that we're arguing about he or she for a dog. About 30 seconds in our conversation, my kids came around and they said, someone is at the door for us.
What happened after that?
She went around and then she came back to me and told me that.
Objection, hearsay.
Well, I'm going to allow it. I think it goes to state of mind. Go ahead. You can go.
I was informed that the police was outside wanting to talk.
And your testimony is that she came and got you.
Yes.
Did you go and speak to the police? Did they take a statement?
No.
Do you know who called the police?
At the time I did, when I went to jail with Conan.
Objection, hearsay.
Okay, I'll sustain that objection.
You testified you had those clippers in your hands. Did you use those against Michelle in any way? Did you ever threaten Michelle with those clippers? Did you ever swear at Michelle? You told the jury that Michelle headbutted you.
Yes, she did.
Tell the jury again what your reaction was.
When her head collided with my nostrils, I grabbed it. Because I have my nose ring, I want to make sure it wasn't bleeding. And then immediately after, I just pushed her on my way, shut the door, and then continued.
No further questions.
Thank you. Cross-examination.
Mr. Brown, let's talk about this business. You said you walked away from the business. When?
Second time I got arrested.
I'm sorry?
Second time I got arrested.
Okay. When was that? What time frame?
It was this year, I think it was March. I was arrested.
So you walked away in March from this business. And this was the way, or a way at least, that you made a living, correct?
It was one way, yes.
One way? It was a profitable business? that a yes or no? Because give or take is, and yes are kind of contradictory. So which one is it?
We broke even.
Broke even. You no longer have a business, that business. So you mentioned on December 9th, you were doing your daily routine with the plants. And the clippers, the trimmers, can you describe these trimmers?
They're like scissors.
They're like scissors. Can you hold them with one hand or with two hands? How long are the blades? About your pointer finger? Are you right-handed or left-handed? Do you use your right hand with the trimmers? So you met your wife in Jamaica and moved to the United States in 2008, correct? And you said you got married in 2010, 2012? And you said it's not your choice to be separated. You didn't say that?
What's not?
It's not your choice to be separated? You still want to be with Michelle? So it wasn't your choice to be separated initially, but it is now.
She filed a divorce against me, so I have to find out of that. We went to counseling and it didn't work out.
So but my question is different. I understand that you're saying that she's filed for divorce. My question is, do you want to be with Michelle now? You don't want to be with her anymore. And you said that the breakup happened because of cheating, right? And you think Michelle was cheating.
Yes.
Were you cheating? Michelle was cheating, but you still wanted to be with her when you separated.
Went to counseling.
So you wanted to work it out. Well, what did you want? You were trying to work it out. So you were willing to look past the cheating.
Yes.
So it didn't bother you. Didn't bother you that she had cheated on you. Not at the time. So at some point it did bother you that she cheated on you.
No, it didn't bother me because we filed a divorce after we didn't realize it wasn't gonna work out.
Okay, so your story is that you found out that your wife was cheating on you, that it didn't bother you. You wanted to work things out. Things didn't work out. And now you're getting divorced. So you have no anger or resentment towards Michelle at all, right? None. No anger about losing the business. No anger about losing that relationship that's 12 years in. No, how about sadness? No sadness? So you were sad, but now you're not sad anymore about it? You weren't sad. You weren't angry. So you're having this conversation with Michelle about the dog you were taking care of, Blue. And she says something to you related about the proper pronoun for a male dog. And you say to her that she should become a scholar if she knows so much about pronouns. Did you mean that?
Said it and I wasn't holding on to it. It's like that.
So you didn't think she should become a scholar, right? I'm asking you if you thought she should become a scholar, which is what you said. Is that what you thought, or were you saying it to hurt her?
I was saying it because she was trying to lecture me.
So you were saying it because she was trying to lecture you. So you were trying to say something to her to make her feel badly about herself?
Based on what I know, based on my schooling also.
So if you're saying to her, if you know so much about pronouns, you should become a scholar. And you don't actually mean that you should become a scholar. How is that not meant to be an insult? Okay, so you say this to her and you don't mean it, right? You're not being sincere with that statement.
You're asking me if I was being sincere.
Correct.
We're in an argument. I was
I understand that you were in an argument. My question is not whether or not you were arguing. My question was, were you being sincere when you said this to her?
being present in an argument.
You were arguing. So you were arguing back, weren't you?
I said to her, well, you should be a scholar, and walked away, nothing else.
And in your mind, that's not arguing back? Not really. Okay, so it is a little bit.
I don't know how you take it.
I'm asking you if that's arguing back in your mind.
No.
So you're not arguing back with her when you say something like that to her.
Asked and answered. Move on.
Now, when she comes to you and you say she headbutts you in the nose and you move her out of the way, do you remember testifying to that? So how were you standing when she came up to you?
I was standing between the door, reaching for the door and trying to pull it in. And she placed her body between the door and the door jamb.
Okay, you made a motion with your body. I want to document for the record. You reached behind yourself, it almost looked like, to grab something. Is that right? When the motion you just made with your arm? To the side. All right. So you're going to shut the door. What kind of door is this? Is this like a swinging door or a sliding door? Swing door. So you're going to shut the door. And she places her body between it. Is that right? So when she places her body between it and you go to move her, where are you moving her to? And you've already grabbed your trimmers, you're going in the other room and you're trying to get away from her, right? So you're shutting the door with your right hand and you're grabbing her with both hands and moving her.
No, I will go when after she headbutted.
Right. So you're shutting the door, she headbutts you, you go to grab her and move her out of the way, right? All right. And you still have the trimmers in your hand, right? All right. And you described this as bickering, correct? When you say that the victim headbutted your nose, how were you standing? Upright, bent over, sitting down? Where was your body? Upright. And you're taller than Michelle? You're 5'7"? Do you have any injuries to your nose? May I have a moment, Your Honor? Nothing further, Your Honor.
Let me redirect.
No, Your Honor.
All right. I just have one question for you, sir. From the front to the back where you went, how far is that? If you use like something in the courtroom, is it further than the back wall?
It's from outside of the front first door to about here.
Okay. So when you left and walked back, just so that I'm clear, that's the distance that was traveled to come
Yes.
back. All right. Thank you. Any questions based on the court's question?
No, Your Honor, thank you. No, Your Honor.
All right, you may step down. Thank you, sir. Any additional witnesses for the defense?
No, Your Honor.
All right. Mr. Allen, you may take the jury.
All right, jury.
You may be seated. All right. Is there going to be any rebuttal
Yes, Your Honor, there's a rebuttal witness.
All right. After this testimony, is everybody gonna be prepared to go into closing, or are we gonna need another break to go through closings, get you prepared for closings and jury instructions? That's, I guess, my question.
I'm ready, Your Honor.
Ready.
Okay. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take a brief recess, get their books set up, and then we'll come back, get rebuttal, closing arguments, and final instructions.
All right. See that district court for county of Washington, state of Michigan. They said Simpson resign.
You may be seated. All right. And we're ready for the jury. In this matter?
Yes. Oh, yes. I didn't know it was a question. I'm sorry, Your Honor. Yes, we're ready.
Question mark.
But thank you.
All right, Kimmy gets jury. Thank you. We're back on the record in the case of the People versus Brown. Defense having arrested rebuttal witnesses for the people.
Called Derek Montster.
All right. Sir, please come forward to be sworn.
You solemnly swear to affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. State, spell your first and last name for the record.
Derek Monster, spelled Gerrrick, last name Monster. Tpre.
You may inquire.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, sir. How are you employed? How are you employed?
Through Pittsfield Township Police Department,
In what capacity are you employed through the police department?
full-time employee.
Full-time employee? And what do you do for them?
I'm a police officer.
And how long have you been a police officer for Pittsfield Township?
2 years in November.
Were you working on December 9th, 2023?
Yes, I will.
Did you respond out to the call involving the defendant, Delmore Brown?
Yes, I will.
And do you see the person that you know to be Delmore Brown in the courtroom today?
I do.
Can you please tell me where he's sitting and what he's wearing?
He is sitting to my left and swearing the purple blanket.
Your Honor, may the record reflect when he's identified the defendant.
Without objection, record so sold.
Did you arrive to the scene at the Pittsfield Township location, the 3729 Trade Center Drive? And were you the arresting officer of the defendant?
I was.
Were you the one that put him into the back of your patrol car?
I was.
And did he say anything when he was in the back of your patrol car?
Yes, after I placed him in the back of my patrol car, we had some utterances saying that he did not see it going too far, and he did not mean to butcher.
Here, may I have a moment?
You may.
Pass the witness.
Cross-examination.
Good afternoon. While he was in your vehicle, he made this statement. He said that he pushed her. He did not say anything else.
No,
He didn't say he put his hand to her neck.
no,
He didn't say he threatened her with the
no.
no further questions.
I have no redirect, Your Honor. May this witness be excused? Or does no questions?
Yes, this witness may be excused. Thank you, sir. You did. All right, that's fine. Any additional witnesses for the people?
No, Your Honor. Nothing further rebuttal.
We prepared for closing arguments.
Yes, Your Honor.
You may proceed.
Thank you.
Members of the jury, as you listen to closing arguments, to rebuttal closing, to the jury instructions, I encourage you to consider all the evidence that's been placed before you here in court and to consider what the witnesses have said and what they haven't said. When we look at this case and examine it, it may be helpful to you to think about the victim's statement, what she told you happened that day. The things that she told you that went on, this argument about the dog Blue and the right pronouns for the dog. A silly argument, maybe to some, but what happened? It may be helpful to you to think about how she said it escalated. How she talked about that they were there working together. She tried to show him her phone. And he told her to get the fuck out of his face. He told her that. Then told you that he pushed her. And that he put his hand on her throat. And she didn't consent to be touched that way. She was scared. She was taken aback. She told you the defendant said that if she wasn't the mother of his kids, stab her. And what does that mean? That means that if you weren't the mother of my children, I would stab you, but you are the mother of my children. So I will insult you. I will tell you that you should be a scholar when you're telling me to use a pronoun for a dog. I will yell at you to get the fuck out of my face. I will push you. I will assault you. I won't stab you. All of these other things, though, are things that I will do, and they are the things the defendant did. Defendant has argued that he acted in self-defense, that he was headbutted by Michelle. And he very plainly asked Michelle if she headbutted him, and she denied it. She didn't headbutt him. She's 5'2". He's 5'7". He says he's standing straight up when this happens, and it hits his nose. He says he feels no anger. He felt no anger. He felt no sadness about his divorce. Ladies and gentlemen, you know what happened here. You know what happened. And I'm asking you to hold the defendant accountable and convict him of domestic violence.
Thank you. Ms. Perry.
This is the last time you're going to hear from me or Mr. Brown. We thank you for your time today. After I'm done, the prosecutor will have a chance to address you again, and the judge is going to address you on the law. Brown, as you know, has been charged with 1 count of domestic violence. He's not denying that he touched Michelle. What we submit to you, members of the jury, is that touch was justified. It was justified because it was in self-defense, and that push was reasonable under the circumstances. This is a problem of the state. The state cannot prove their case because a crime was not committed. Delmore pushed Michelle away when she headbutted him. He acted quickly, reflexively, to stop any further harm. The push carried no intention of harming Michelle. It was to get her out of his space. You heard today that Delmore and Michelle were in a verbal argument. The state asked my client about calling Michelle a scholar. We talked about pronouns and the dog blue, but we all know that this argument was not about pronouns. It's not about the dog blue. It was not whether he really thought she should become a scholar or not. These are 2 people going through a divorce. They're going to argue. Mr. Brown testified that he tried to de-escalate the situation. He testified that he left the room. He testified that he walked down a really long hallway, and Michelle made that choice to follow him. You heard the judge ask how long that hallway was. His testimony was from here to that last door. Michelle had every second of that walk to turn around and not escalate the situation, not follow Delmore, and continue that conversation. He didn't slap, hit, punch Michelle when she headbutted him. He simply pushed her out of his space. There's no physical evidence of this crime. There's no video. There's no injuries. There's only the testimony of Michelle. And Michelle provided two different stories to the police. At first, she said, no, he didn't threaten me. And when the police called and followed up, she said, actually, yes, he did threaten me with those clippers. Michelle Brown has a vested interest in the outcome of this case. They're going through a divorce. She testified divorces are messy. They carry lots of emotion. They're hard to get through. There's high emotions. Those emotions are even higher when there's assets involved and when there's children involved. And I know a mom will do anything for her children. But again, she has a vested interest in the outcome of this case. And it's your duty to take the credibility or biases of all the witnesses that testified today. Michelle didn't call 911, someone else did. Her boyfriend, Timothy. We don't know his reasons for calling 911 because he wasn't here. We didn't hear from him. We don't know if it was because he truly was afraid for Michelle. We don't know if he didn't want her spending time with them more. They have kids, they have a business together. They were spending a lot of time together. We don't know because he's not here. You saw the people call an additional witness about Delmore's statement in the car. He said that he pushed her. That's what he testified to today. He put one hand on her front, one hand on her back, and pushed her out of the way, out of the door. A push, a movement, an encouragement to move. This is your duty to evaluate all of this testimony. And it's your duty to take that statement into consideration. His statement was consistent when he was in the back of a police patrol car. In a criminal case, when we err on the side of caution, Mr. Brown has a presumption of innocence. You may not find the defendant guilty, Mr. Brown, until the prosecutor has proven her case beyond a reasonable doubt. You've heard all this evidence today, and you may have questions. What I want you to do is consider if those questions are actually a doubt. We're asking you to give your full and fair consideration of all the evidence today, and we ask that you return a verdict of not guilty. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Perkins. A rebuttal.
Judge is going to give you some instructions in a few minutes about the law and how to apply the law to the evidence and determine the facts. It's your job as a juror, is to determine the facts from everything that's been presented here today. And when you have a question about what a presumption of innocence and what beyond a reasonable doubt means, you'll have the law to look at. You'll have the law with you. In your binders, I believe you have copies of the jury instructions, and Judge will go through them here in a few minutes. And the reason that the burden that people have is beyond a reasonable doubt and not beyond all possible doubt is because it would be practically impossible to prove something beyond all possible doubt. Unless maybe we had a time machine and we could all go back. We could all watch this unfold in real life. We don't have that. But it's a doubt based on reason and common sense. That's what must exist for you to say there's not enough. Following someone in a building where you both have a right to be, not a crime. Speaking to somebody you're not legally forbidden to speak to is not a crime. Pushing someone is a crime. Putting your hands on someone in a harmful or offensive way without their consent is a crime. That's what the defendant did. And it's wrong. And it's scary. And it's a crime.
Members of the jury, the evidence and arguments in this case are finished, and I will now instruct you on the law. That is, I will explain to you the law that applies to this case. The defendant in this case is charged with the crime of domestic violence or domestic assault. To prove this charge, the prosecutor must prove each of the following elements beyond a reasonable doubt. First, that the defendant did assault and/or assault and battered Michelle Brown. A battery is a forceful, violent, or offensive touching of a person or something closely connected with him or her. The touching must have been intended by the defendant, that is, not accidental. It must have been against Michelle Brown's will. An assault is an attempt to commit a battery or an act that would cause a reasonable person to fear or apprehend an immediate battery. The defendant must have intended either to commit a battery or to make Michelle Brown reasonably fear an immediate battery. At the time of the assault, the defendant must have had the ability to commit a battery or must have appeared to have the ability or must have thought he had the ability. Second, that at the time Michelle Brown was the defendant's spouse, was the defendant's former spouse, had a child in common, or was a resident or former resident of the same household. As used in these instructions, force or violence means any use of physical force against another person so as to harm or embarrass them. For a battery to occur, the touching must have been intended by the defendant. As I've indicated, that is not accidental. It must have been against the complainant's will, Ms. Brown. And it doesn't matter whether or not the touching caused an injury. The defendant does not have to prove that he acted in self-defense. Instead, the prosecutor must prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant did not act in self-defense. The defendant claims that he acted in lawful self-defense. A person has a right to use the force necessary to defend themselves under certain circumstances. If a person acts in lawful self-defense, his actions are justified and they are not guilty of the crime of domestic violence or assault and battery. You should consider all of the evidence and use the following rules to decide whether the defendant acted in lawful self-defense. Remember to judge the defendant's conduct according to how the circumstances appeared to him at the time he acted. First, when he acted, the defendant must have honestly and reasonably believed that he had to use force to protect himself from imminent harm or unlawful use of force by another. If his belief was honest and reasonable, he could act at once to defend himself, even if it turns out later that he was wrong about how much danger he was in. Second, a person is only justified in using the degree of force that seems necessary to protect themselves from danger. The defendant must have used the kind of force that was appropriate to the attack made in the circumstances as they saw them. When you decide whether the force used was what was necessary, you should consider whether the defendant knew about any other ways of protecting himself. But you may also consider how the excitement of the moment affected the choice he made. Third, the right to defend oneself lasts only as long as it seems necessary for the purpose of protection. Fourth, the person claiming self-defense must not have acted wrongfully and brought on the assault. The defendant's intent may prove by what he said, what he did, how he did it, or by any other fact and circumstance in evidence. It's indicated to you previously, ladies and gentlemen, possible penalty in this case should not influence your decision. It is my duty, if the defendant is found guilty, to fix any penalty within the limits as prescribed by law. Mr. Allen, could you take the jury?
All right.
You may be seated. Any objection to the instructions as given by the court?
No, Your Honor. No, Your Honor.
All right, very good. Then the court will stand in recess until such time as we have a question.
Oh, shoot.
Really?
Sorry.
Really? In the middle of my,
You're beautiful.
yeah, I know. I was saying something so eloquently and then, oh, bless you.
I
So the court will stand in recess until we receive either a question or the verdict in this case. So counsel remain nearby, please.
Yes.
All right, court stands in recess.
District Court for County of Washington, State of Michigan, is now back.
You may be seated. I have been informed. Court does call the case of the People versus Delmar Brown.
Excellent. People?
Evening, this is public attorney on behalf of Mr. Brown, who is present.
All right. I have received word that we have a verdict of the parties ready to receive that verdict.
The people are ready.
Ready, Judge.
All right.
May be seated. Your Honor, the jury is present.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I've heard that you have reached a verdict. Court does call the case of the people of State of Michigan versus Delmar Brown. Counsel, state your appearances for the record.
Excellent. The people?
This is public defender Lauren on behalf of Mr. Brown.
All right. All right, you're seated in seat number 2. I believe the foreperson who speaks for it. You have a verdict, sir. If you please rise. Sir, defendant, please rise. What is that verdict? All right, thank you. You may be seated, sir. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this I'm a very grateful judge and a very grateful court. I want to thank you for your service. I'll be back to formally excuse you from service momentarily. And so, Mr. Allen, if you could take the jury, please.
All right, to the jury.
The verdict form. All right, you may be seated, folks. All right. Mr. Brown, the jury having found you not guilty, you are discharged from any other further obligation to this court, sir. All right. Good luck to you. Good job, counsel. Thank you. 14A.